You're Locked On Wild. Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Locked On Wild, live here on a rainy Sunday. Coming off of another loss to the Winnipeg Jets, finishing off the season sweep against Winnipeg. The Jets did against the Wild. Another Central Division team that the Wild just were not in the same hemisphere as this season. And I want to start by correcting my math from last night, because it's down to one. It's down to 1 point. And that'll be the end of it. Because the Los Angeles Kings, in winning last night, vaulted the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas has 92 points. If they get 1 point, that will do it. And do they play tonight? Do they play today? Of course not. So I guess this dance will carry on into tomorrow. Does Vegas play tomorrow night? Yes. Vegas plays Vancouver tomorrow night. So if Vegas picks up a point, then at best the Minnesota Wilds could tie them in the standings if they run the table. But Vegas already has 42 wins. And so the Wilds, if Vegas even wins one more game, it's over. Because the Wilds, because of where they're at right now, with how few regulation wins they have, it's down to the official end of the line, but it's taking its sweet time to get there. I just would like it to. I would like to have the finalities taken care of, so that we don't have to keep talking about this. I mean, Money Puck, it's a 0.1% chance. 0.1%. And actually, I would go so far as to say, if the Wild were to lose to Chicago today, which is not super likely, then they are mathematically eliminated. So we're getting down there to the final bit of it. But if you saw Twitter at all, there's been quite the back and forth because of something that I tweeted yesterday that is just glaringly apparent against teams like the Winnipeg Jets. And so I want to find it here. Because there's a huge disparity in size between the two teams yesterday. And it's no coincidence that the Winnipeg Jets are second in the league in terms of average height. Minnesota Wild are dead last. And in terms of average weight, the Winnipeg Jets are seventh. Minnesota Wild are dead last. This is the smallest and the shortest roster in the NHL. And it's something that is, and it's the seventh oldest. It's something, folks, that is going to have to change, because if you only have a couple of guys that are capable of standing up to a Logan Stanley or any other player that has any level of size, if you don't have anybody that's capable of handling that, then you just are going to continue to see liberties taken. We saw it yesterday from Logan Stanley. That's apparently the only thing that he's good at. like there's nobody that can answer that on this roster. It's a huge problem. And it is one of the slowest rosters as well. Like Minnesota boys right on. It's a small, short, slow, and old roster. And some of this is going to be helped by young prospects, but like this team's a fragile one too. Like we gotta just accept the facts that this is a team that just is not willing to do a lot of the things that you have to do in order to win hockey games. And you look at, I had somebody on Twitter suggest, well, size does not correlate to success in the postseason. Respectfully disagree. Like, let's just go through the list here. The heaviest team in the league is the Vegas Golden Knights. They're in a wild card spot right now. The New York Islanders are fighting for a playoff spot. Boston is leading their division. Edmonton is second in the Pacific. New York Rangers are one of the best teams in the NHL. Winnipeg Jets are seventh. They're in the top 3 in the Central. Washington Capitals are in a postseason spot. Tampa Bay Lightning in a postseason spot. Dallas in a postseason spot. Toronto in a postseason spot. Florida in a postseason spot. Like, of the top 13 teams in the league in terms of average weight, the only team that is not in a playoff spot amongst the top 13 right now is the Montreal Canadiens. Now let's talk about average height. Vegas, Winnipeg, New York Islanders, Boston Bruins, New York Rangers, Edmonton Oilers, Washington Capitals, Chicago Blackhawks, New Jersey Devils, Philadelphia Flyers, Florida Panthers, Toronto Maple Leafs, Tampa Bay Lightning, Vancouver Canucks. Of the top 14, 2 teams not in a playoff spot right now. And here's the thing. Here's the key part about this is if you have the Wilds have players that have skill that are undersized. Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi, to name a few. Murat Huznadinov, I'll put in that category too. And so then you have to have players that have size. But the problem with it is the guys that the Wild have that have size, that's really all they bring to the table. Like, you have to have guys that have both size and skill. Good example, Edmonton Oilers. Connor McDavid's not tiny. Does he use his physicality all the time? No, but he has it if needed. And he also has a ton of skill. Like, you can't, and this undersells again how important those roster spots are that are currently being occupied by Marcus Johansson and Freddie Gaudreau. Marcus Johansson is over 6 foot, but he doesn't do anything. It would be one thing if he was physical. Like, if he was physical on that line, awesome, great, love it. But he's not physical. He does not bring a ton other than just general speed to the table. He really doesn't bring anything to the table. And that's a top 6 spot in your line that is not getting anything. Like, this has really devolved, folks, into just an astoundingly bad roster construction, if we're being honest. Like, it just, like, I really, frankly, I don't even really know what to say. Like, it's a small roster that, it's a small roster that just is not willing to do a lot of the things that you have to do to win games. Like, it's amazing how quickly this has deteriorated. And like 2 years ago, you had the grief line. You had Eriksson Ek, Foligno, and Greenway. Really good because it was Eriksson Ek doing his thing. It was Foligno having both, being physical, but also contributing offensively. And it was Greenway just being part of that mix. You have to be able to have both, not one or the other. And I just like, in terms of what we do to fix this, first off, you're going to have to get your general manager to admit that mistakes have been made and that changes need to be made to this roster. But here's the problem too, is that, you know, the reason that it has been discussed, that Russo has pointed it out, the reason that Rossi is at least being looked at is because that's one of the few players that you can move, no questions asked. And getting somebody that has size to play in one of those spots is something that you absolutely need, but it shouldn't come at the expense of a Marco Rossi. That's the overarching theme to all of this, is that what is going to happen should not come at the expense of the young players that are on the roster. Marco Rossi has shown he is more than capable of being an NHL guy. You shouldn't have to part with that to bring in something that you're desperately needing. But I don't think, because if it happens in the offseason, you're going to see a couple of I was wrong episodes. But I don't get the sense that Bill Guerin is going to move on from Freddie Gaudreau unless somebody wows them with an offer. And I don't get the sense that he's willing to move Marcus Johansson, which those should be non-starters for where this team is at. I don't know. Like, enough of me talking. Let's get to everybody's questions. If you've got questions, fire them in. Denny's here. The whole crew is filling in here for this Sunday ahead of our watch party for the game today. Get me in a better mood. Let's fire up some questions. I just get sick of seeing the same thing on a daily basis, and I get sick of seeing the team get pushed around and have no response. Like, it's happened every game against Winnipeg. It's happened a bunch of different times against other teams. Like, have some pride. Give a damn. There just is. And then in the power play to end the game, when you're down by 2 goals, and basically you have to win every game for the rest of the season to even have a chance at the postseason, nobody was willing to take the shot. Just pass it around the perimeter. I just don't know. Like, this whole thing is just, the milk has curdled in the span of less than 1 calendar year. The milk has curdled in every category on this team. Special teams, offense, defense, goaltending, secondary scoring. It's all curdled. It's all gone bad. And it's not a plug-in situation. You're not one guy away, but it kind of feels like the team thinks they are. Just one player away from being able to hop back in and be a legit contender for the playoffs. They're not one player away. And I don't get it. Stevenson, Martinez, Carrier, Mantha are all UFAs. Vegas can't renew them all. Is it possible to just take one of them? Let's just dive in. And then Bill's got a great question to follow that up. Let's look at players, upcoming free agents. I just want to see where they were at from a numbers perspective for last season. So some of the potential free agents, like, see, this is this is the thing. Like, he's never going to get here, but Sam Reinhart as a free agent, that would be really fun. They need to do something size wise, and I would take any of those guys because they played with Vegas, so they are winners. They won the Stanley Cup. Like, you just have to address it in a major way. And Russo responded to my tweet and echoed the same sentiment, and he said it all season too. And I know a lot of that was due to getting rid of the Deweys and Pat Maroon. That's a lot of your bite, and the fact that Marcus Foligno was shut down for the season. But like, you have zero other players that can even attempt to fill that type of role on the roster right now, besides Marcus Foligno and Jake Middleton and Zach Bogosian. Bogosian was also out, and Jake Middleton is too important to the defense for him to fight. You have nobody else. Mason Shaw, if he would have tried to fight Logan Stanley last night, he would have gotten his face caved in, because that is a wide disparity in what Stanley brings to the table at 6'7" and what Mason Shaw brings to the table at 5'10". Yeah, you just, but here's the this is the thing too, is having just those guys, they don't bring anything to the table. And so then if you have those guys on the ice that don't bring anything other than physicality, if you can't catch up to the players that are being if you can't catch up to the opponent, you're pretty worthless out there. Like, you have to find players that have both, that can do both, so that when it's time to be a team with speed and skill, you can do that. And when it's time to kind of slow it down and beef it up, you can do that. This team, this team, the Mild didn't become a force until they had players like Delorier, Reeves, Maroon. Last trade deadline lost all grit again, and the team played small again. And look, this is why Bill Guerin went out and got those guys, is because they bring the element that the team doesn't have. But again, we just see that they don't really give you a lot beyond that, which is why, if you're going to really fix this problem, and there were people responding to that tweet saying that, Yurov, Ugrin, they've got some size to them. Like, that's how you have to address it, is you have to get it into your system, but you have to have players with size and skill. It's going to be very fascinating to see what happens with Charlie Stramel once he transfers. Almost said retires. Once he transfers, if he can add a little skill, then that starts to get intriguing. But like, you've got one Joel Eriksson Ek out there on the ice, and you need like 6 of them. Just like you need a couple of Kaprizovs on this team too. Looking objectively, moving Rossi doesn't really help matters if BG is looking for a win now. A size and skill player is going to cost money. Rossi is still on his ELC, so moving him won't free up that money. This is also accurate, but again, Rossi is one of the few players on the team that does not have any sort of trade protections. And so what will likely end up happening is if you can get one of those contracts off the books, you would have to attach a pick or a prospect to sweeten the deal for whatever team takes them on. Because A, the players are in positions where they don't have to waive, or B, you don't want to waive them. Have them do Herbies for 2 hours a day till they get their mind right or ask for a trade. Denny, I hear you. I think there needs to be, I think a John Tortorella type on this team would fix a lot of these issues, but that's a GM thing. Bill Guerin is not going to do that because these are his guys. They're his guys that he signs, and nothing's going to be done about Bill Guerin because Greg Leopold is a fan of his. So I really am at the point where I'm like, I don't know what can be done to fix this, because the two spots that control all the decision making are pretty locked in. And we hear comments about liking what Marcus Johansson brings to the table. Thought that line last night had a particularly good performance. Thought his skating has been really good. Like, I don't get the sense that there is any sort of worry from within the team about his performance this year. It just doesn't seem like it. It just doesn't seem like there's any urgency about anything that has happened at any point this season. Fired up today. Looking ahead to the offseason, how about Spurgeon, Gustafson, a draft pick, and possibly a prospect for Draisaitl? This is figuring Fleury comes back with Jesper next year. I think if Fleury wants to come back, I think Gustafson will be moved, because you can't have three goalies. And if Jesper shows that he's ready, like he's going to start today against Chicago, if he shows that he's ready for it, then why not give it to him? But until Jared Spurgeon shows that he's healthy, he's not going anywhere. And is Bill Guerin going to move his captain? That's another thing. Is Bill Guerin going to do any of what we are hoping he's going to do? Because he's still I can't wait to see how the end of the year presser goes, because it's not going to shock me if there still is a resounding belief in this roster and these players that he himself put together. Like, until Bill Guerin has the come to Jesus moment, until he has the come to Jesus moment, like, he's not gonna do any of this. He's the only one that can. What is Leon Draisaitl's current contract situation? Because honestly, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he is prioritized as a target. So his deal is done. His deal is done after next season, and he's making 8.5. Boy, it would be nice to have some of that money tied in defensively to be able to go get a guy like that. But again, GM is infatuated with this roster. He's infatuated with this roster that he put together. So, and if he's not under any sort of if he is not under any sort of pressure himself, no need for drastic changes. Let's talk Jake Guentzel. Denny has been on the Jake Guentzel trade from day one, that he is coming here, is going to sign a 1-year deal, and wants to play for the home team. I'd be perfectly fine with that. If he would sign, say, for $1 or $2 million for a season, and then you could lock him into a long-term deal after that. If that would be the case, he's a Pittsburgh guy. He's got ties to Bill Guerin. There are a lot of dominoes that come together for that, and he would be like, he'd be an immediate plug-and-play top 6 guy. But does he want to? The questions you got to ask yourself: is he going to take that? Is he going to take that type of a deal? Does he want to come here? It appears as though the does he want to come here is a yes. Is he going to get? Is some bad team going to swoop in and offer $13 million a year to try to, sway him? That's the kind of stuff you can't anticipate. It's if he does want to, like, I'm perfectly fine with him coming here. Question is do all the boxes get checked? Can you sign him for a short-term 1-year deal? Like, short, because what do the Wild have for? What do they have for space? It's going to be limited because you're going to be trying to get Jared Spurgeon on the roster next year, which I don't see. But you've got Alex Goligoski coming off. You've got Marc-Andre Fleury probably coming off. So you've got some money that is going to be freed up. Look, if he wants to take a short-term or a 1-year deal to kind of get things started, I'd do it yesterday. But it just comes down to his priorities and his willingness to come here. This is another part of the question too, is that you're going to have to factor in Faber's extension, and Rossi's got an extension coming up. Now, they don't kick in next year, but they will have to be worked on between this offseason and next year. So you got to factor that in too. Is yes, Parise and Suter's money gets freed up for the most part, but you've got a Brock Faber extension coming up. You got a Marco Rossi extension coming up. You've got a Marcus Johansson just kidding. Oh, could you imagine? Could you imagine if we hear rumblings about that, so it's time to re-up? You know what the best case scenario is for next year? Hear me out on this. Best case scenario for Marcus Johansson next year is that he tears it up to start the season because he's in a contract year, and that seems to be the only thing that he really is able to hone in on is contract years. He lights it up. The team is out of it again by the trade deadline, and you send him somewhere for a first-round pick. That is the dream scenario for the Wild next year. Because, again, and look, if Bill Guerin does elect to waive, I'll give him credit. But I just don't see it. Like, he's going to be on the roster next year. And so the only thing that we can hope for is that he plays well while the team doesn't. And that then you trade him at the deadline and you get a high pick for him from some desperate team that has pulled the wool over their eyes. and has not realized that the reason he's playing the way he is because it's a contract year. But then you end up fooling yourselves. You end up fooling yourself well, hey, if he's doing this year, let's lock him in and keep him around long term. No. It's time to move on. Judd and I were talking back and forth today. The time to get Marcus Johansson off the roster is now. Like, free up that spot. Free it up completely. And get anybody else in there. Anybody else in there that's going to provide any level of upside. You're not even getting league average performance from that second line wing spot. We're now up to 42 games on the season in which Marcus Johansson has recorded one or fewer shots. 42 games. Like, as much as people have chided Matt Boldy's performance this year, I think Boldy has 30 games in which he does not have a point, but you've played 75, which means he has 45 games in which he has recorded a point. And look, I know I've been on the Matt Boldy defense train quite a bit the last few days. He's not without his warts. There are areas in which Matt Boldy can improve, certainly. Finishing. There are some days in which I feel like he could just be a little more aggressive. Those are things that you want a 23-year-old player to work on. Like, if we got to the point at 22 where Matt Boldy had everything figured out, that's a problem. The fact that he has areas to improve his game and it got you 31 goals last year and 26 goals this year. The fact that he is doing that while also still having room to improve is great. We'll talk about that when we get to report card season for this Minnesota Wild team. But the fact that Matt Boldy's 23, he's producing at the level that he is, and he still has room to improve. It'd be foolish to trade that. It'd be foolish to decide to move on from a guy who, if he can add a little beef to his frame, he's going to be a problem. I can promise you that. If he adds a little more beef to his frame, if he spends a couple of off seasons with Joel Eriksson Ek, he's going to be a problem. And it just would be foolish to move on from that. This makes me sad. Worst rated winger in the NHL, and he's playing premium second line minutes. He's playing on the power play. He's playing on the penalty kill. I'm not going to have anything left by the time the season is done. Like, this that we've seen all season long has just sucked the life out of me. Boldy needs to add about 15. Yep, Drew is exactly right. Add a little muscle to the frame. Needs to skate more and hit and stop gliding and reaching. Spot on. Drew is spot on here. These are all areas we'd like to see improvement from Matt Boldy. I have no problem with this. And I hope Boldy starts to kind of, take this all to heart, because he's a good player. Matt Boldy is a good player. You can't deny that. But we want to see him take that step to the next level. We want to see him make that jump from where he's at to the next level. Like, let's get the off-season workout group going. So Eriksson Ek is the lead. Rossi, Boldy, Faber. So I feel like we do this in two segments. Ek leading the likes of Rossi, Boldy, Faber. Throw Chisholm in there. Kaprizov. Take Kaprizov with Yurov, Kuznetsov, Ugrin, first off, Kumpalainen. Let Kaprizov be the ambassador for all of those guys, because if you want this to go on the two players that put in the most work in the offseason, it's Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov. Like, those are the two that should be emulated. So Kaprizov can take all the prospects, and Eriksson Ek can take all the rest. Like, and just go through just strenuous workouts. Beef up a little bit. This team just needs, I would love nothing more than if this team would just develop kind of an FU attitude. Like, by and large. They need just but not only we're gonna be physical with you, but like we're gonna beat you on both ends. We're gonna beat you with skill, and then we are gonna beat you into submission. Like, I just want the fun back. That's all I want. Oh God, what did I say? What did I say that? Yeah, a chip. Good morning, Trav, or good afternoon, I guess. He has all the say. He is holding all of the cards. What he says, what Kaprizov says goes. And if he leans into that a little bit, like if he said, I don't want Marcus Johansson here, gone, off the roster, we may start to see that. We may start to see that from him as we get closer to his extension, which again, I'm not as worried about the extension as I am about what happens after. If this team doesn't hit that window of contention, if they stumble, if they fail, then you get 2 or 3 years into his extension and he says, I'm out. Because he's going to be given all the keys. He's going to be given all the keys here. Does he have a desire to go play on the East Coast or the West Coast? Probably. But if you go to, say, the New York Rangers, you don't have all the keys there. If you go to the Los Angeles Kings, you don't have all the keys there. If you go to the Anaheim Ducks, you're going to be the best player on that team by a mile, and there's going to be nobody else that can help you. So he is going to want, the Wild are in a position where, yes, they'll probably have to overpay by a couple of mil, but he is the guy here. He has the opportunity to write records with this team that will never be broken. Maybe then we could actually get a legitimate jersey retirement instead of the two that are currently in the rafters. 18,001 and 9. I'd love to see 97 up there someday. Need to take away Johansson's gym. He doesn't, I don't know if he has one. Like, he better not. That would be so on brand for this franchise, though. To retire number 11. Be so on brand. The next jersey to be retired should not be until Kaprizov. That's the next one. There should not be anybody between now and then. And honestly, like, can you do an unretirement for a jersey number? Or can we just put it can we put number 9 a little higher in the rafters? Like, all the way at the top? I don't know. Mikko Koivu was a great defensive center, but he was miscast as a number one. And the reason that he has the offensive accolades that he does is because this team has only been around for 20 years and he's played for 15 of them. That's what it is. That's what it boils down to. Like, he just was miscast. He was never a 1C. But he was put into that role, and like, he played for 15 years. He was like a 15 goal a season guy. 50, 60 points. Sounds good, Denny. I saw your comment last night. I was out with some friends in the cities. Not the Locked On Senators guys. They didn't kidnap me again. But yeah, just keep me posted on this. We'll get you on once you got everything set up. I like this. Minnesota's first best. Like, he was but see, then, like, you should have retired Gaborik too. Like, why just 9? I don't get it. And, the funny thing too is there was so much made about the fact that Bill Guerin moved on from Mikko Koivu. I don't have a problem with that decision because it did not work out well with Koivu in Columbus because he didn't have anything left in the tank. I have no problem with Guerin saying, sorry, we're going to go in a different direction. I have no problem with that. But, like, he was just never a 1C. Yeah, John, you're correct. I feel it coming. I feel it coming in my bones that there is a course correction move to be made this offseason. And it's going to be a win now move. It is going to be it's going to be somebody with size, because that could very well be a quote that we hear after the season is done is we need to get bigger. It's funny because, like, it was grit first in the postseason last year, right? Yes, Swiffer T wet jet mop is right. There have been bright spots this season for sure. Rossi and Faber, career year for Eriksson Ek, Kaprizov, Boldy, but, like, this season has just mostly been over since the beginning of the year. There have been some stretches of good play, but there just has been so much inconsistency, so much, like, evaporated secondary scoring. It's just been, like, it's by and large been tough, like, for me to cover, because it just seems like every game happens and the result is the same, like 5 or 6 different outcomes every game. And that gets tedious and monotonous, and gets to be a lot. I'm still reading responses to this tweet that I put out about the Wild being dead last in many categories, and people saying, no, you need star power before you need size. Like, well, then you're just going to get the piss beat out of you for the next 2 seasons. Size is what wins in the NHL right now. And if you try to go opposite of that, you have to really buy into it. And I don't know. I'm just tired of seeing this team get kicked around and have zero response. Like that is just preposterously frustrating. Is to see this team just continue to get kicked around by the same teams and have zero response. Zero response. No response. They're okay with the result. They're okay with what's going on. Like, it's exhausting. Somebody asking on Twitter why Guerin never gets pressed on any of this. He does. Bill Guerin has been pressed plenty on this. The problem is that his answer never changes. His answer to the questions never changes. His answer is always, I believe in this team. I believe in these extensions. Like, he's been pressed on it plenty. He just does not answer the questions. Let's talk about the fun things like Kuzi punching Bedard in the mouth today. I wish somebody would take him out of the game entirely so I can stop hearing about the Calder Trophy race. Now, I'm not going to advocate for players getting hurt. That's too lowbrow for this show. It's not lowbrow for many others out there, but and like the funny thing too is that it's a Chicago team that you absolutely should beat just by default. But it's going to be a complete struggle because this team is in feel sorry for us mode. And so it's going to end up being 3-2, 2-1. I don't know. I honestly, like, the only reason that I'm going to watch today's game is because of Jesper. Really, seriously, honestly. Like, the only reason that I'm going to watch today's game is because of Jesper. Like, I'm to the point where I just am like, if we're going to just see this team string this out and play this out in a string, like, I've seen enough. I've seen enough from this season to know how this plays out. I just want to get to the offseason when we can start to really dive into this stuff and try to figure out what is a legitimate thing that could be done by this franchise and what are things that are just going to continue to be problems. Just scrolling through Twitter to see if anything, if there are any updates on who's in, who's out. Looks like Ryan Hartman is going to just slot right back into the top 6. So, so it looks like he'll get second line minutes here today. That'd be just awesome. Let me look. I'm not sure about Kumpalainen's size profile. He is 6'2", 191. So 6'2 plays. Anything over 200 plays as well. Yeah, the overarching theory, the reason that I keep going back to a course adjustment is because let's not lose sight of the overall goal for this team, which is to just simply make the playoffs. That's the goal for this team every season, to simply make the playoffs. And so if you fail that goal this year, then you have to make sure that you get that goal taken care of next year. And so that means in win now mode, you trade prospects for veteran players that can help you right now. That's just how this works. And I think that's a terrible choice, frankly. But like, the other thing too is, I don't know. There are so many different things that are issues with this team. I really don't know where to start, because the size is a huge problem. But as somebody is pointing out on Twitter, like, you have to have stars too. And if you add the size first, you still have no skill. Yeah, but if you add the skill without adding the size, you still have no size, and you still get pushed around the ice like a rag doll. Let's finish, because I got to go get groceries. Let's finish with cup predictions. Denny threw out asking who everybody thinks is going to win the cup. Drop them in the comments who you think is going to get to the cup and win the cup. Drop them in the comments. Got a late for Florida. Florida's a good call. Denny picked Carolina. Carolina is a great choice. We got Florida versus Dallas. We got a bunch of Florida here. Florida Panthers have been a great team all season, and it feels like one that deserves a dive into how they built what they did. Avs and Duhaime, I would be very in favor of that. Cup pick before the season was Dallas. Still riding with them, but they look shaky. Boston wins the East. Boston. Oilers versus Panthers. Nashville would be a fun wild card team to see rise to the top. There are certainly some good options for cup teams here. The Wild will not be one of them. Canes versus Stars. I like that. Could see the Rangers and Oilers making it too. Avs versus Rangers, perhaps. Cup winners have two elements: very strong first line, good goaltender, strong D depth. You have to have a really good top six. You've got to have a really good top six in order to win, in order to go far in the playoffs. Because if you just have one line that scores, that's easy for teams to defend against, because you just throw your best defensive line out there and it's neutralized. And then if the other team has a second scoring line, that's where the problems come in. And so You got to have your top 6 locked in. The Wild don't. They've got like 4 guys probably out of their top 6, but you have to have a rock solid top 6, and then you add whatever you need to your bottom 6 beyond that. And the Wild have done it. The Wild have done it backwards. Anyway, I'm going to call it for today's Sunday live show, because we'll be back at it here in 90 minutes for Wild and Blackhawks. So make sure to hit the like button here for today, and we'll see you in about an hour and a half for today's live stream of Wild and Blackhawks. So we'll see how things play out, and we will be back with you here in about 90 minutes. But make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe for future content as part of the Locked On Wild arsenal. You can find all of our episodes by just searching Locked On Wild on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platforms. We've got new content for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.